Tamara Edwer woke up with a dry throat, a heavy head, and the strange feeling that something was very wrong. For a few seconds, she did not open her eyes. She only lay there trying to understand why the bed felt unfamiliar. The mattress was too soft. The air smelled of expensive perfume and cold air freshener. Somewhere in the room, a light humming sound came from an air conditioner. Then she opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was a white ceiling with a chandelier hanging above her. Her heart skipped. That was not her room. Before we begin, remember this. While the story you're about to hear is fictional, the message behind it is very real. At Zara Tales, we believe the right story at the right moment can change a life. Tamara pushed herself up quickly and the duvet slipped from her chest. She froze. She was half-dressed. One side of her dress was off her shoulder. Her hair, which had been neatly styled the day before, was loose and rough around her face. Her breathing changed at once. "No," she whispered. She turned sharply to the other side of the bed. A man was lying beside her. He was shirtless. He looked to be around his early 30s, tall even while lying down, with a firm chest, flat stomach, and the kind of body that showed he took care of himself. His skin was smooth and deep brown. His face was strong and striking, with a clean jaw, thick brows, and lips that looked too calm for the madness Tamara was suddenly drowning in. He was very handsome, too handsome, and completely unknown to her. Tamara screamed. The man jerked awake at once. "What is it?" he said, sitting up fast. His voice was deep and rough with sleep. Tamara moved back until her body hit the headboard. "Who are you?" she shouted. "Who am I? Why am I in this room?" The man blinked hard, still trying to wake up. He looked around the room, then at her, his eyes narrowed with confusion. What kind of question is that? What kind of question? Tamara almost choked on the words. I woke up in a strange room beside a strange man, and you are asking me what kind of question that is. The man sat fully upright now. The duvet dropped lower on his waist and Tamara quickly turned her face away. "Please cover yourself." He looked down at himself, then reached for the duvet without much concern. "Okay, can you stop shouting for 1 second?" "Stop shouting," she said. "Stop shouting. I do not know you." That seemed to hit him. He stared at her for a moment, really looking at her now, as if trying to measure if she was acting or serious. Then his face changed. "You are serious." Tamara's eyes filled at once. "Of course I am serious. Who are you?" He drew in a breath. "My name is Chibuzo." She had never heard that name in her life. "I do not know you. I have never met you before in my life." Chibuzo rubbed one hand over his face. He looked tired but not panicked yet. "Look, I do not know what game this is." "This is not a game. Why am I in your bed?" Chibuzo looked at her for another second, then gave the answer that made her blood run cold. "Because we slept together." The room went still. Tamara stared at him as if she had stopped hearing. "What?" His voice was flat now, maybe because he was still confused himself. "If you are asking whether we had sex, yes, we did." Tamara shook her head so fast it almost hurt. "No, no, no, that is not possible." Chibuzo frowned. "What do you mean it is not possible?" "I mean it is not possible. I do not sleep with strangers. I am not that kind of person. I have never seen you before in my life." He looked at her for a long moment, then glanced at the bed, the clothes on the floor, and back at her face. Tamara followed his eyes and saw a heel near the chair, his shirt on the carpet, her clutch bag near the table, and one earring under the bed. Her stomach turned. "Oh, God," she whispered. "What?" She pressed both hands to her head. Fragments tried to come back, but nothing stayed. Loud music, glasses, laughter, someone handing her a drink, then nothing. A thick, empty darkness. This cannot be happening. Chibuzo's voice softened a little. "Are you saying you really do not remember anything?" Tamara looked at him with fear and disgust. "Do not speak to me like we know each other." "Fine, but you were here." "I know I was here," she cried. "And that is the problem." Her chest was rising too fast now. She felt hot and cold at the same time. Then it hit her. Today, her wedding. Tamara slapped her hand over her mouth. "Oh no." She pushed the duvet aside and jumped down from the bed. Her legs nearly gave way under her. She caught the edge of the table before she fell. "What?" Chibuzo asked, now looking more alert. Tamara turned to him, her face pale. "I am getting married today." He stared at her. "What?" "I am getting married today," she shouted. "My wedding is this morning." This morning? For the first time since waking up, Chibuzo looked truly shaken. Tamara began picking up her things with trembling hands. Her phone was dead. Her dress was creased. Her head felt like it would split open. "No, no, no," she kept saying. "This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening." She had been with Marvelous the evening before. Marvelous Edem, the man she was supposed to marry in a few hours. Marvelous was a calm, decent young man from a good family. He was not perfect, but he had loved her in a steady, gentle way that made her feel safe. They had planned this day for months. Their families had prepared, friends had arrived, her white dress was waiting, and now she was standing in another man's hotel room with one shoe missing and her life already breaking apart. A hard knock landed on the door. Tamara froze. Another knock came, louder this time. "Tamara." A woman's voice called from outside. "Tamara, are you in there?" It was Doris Akpan, her close friend and chief bridesmaid. Tamara's face drained completely. Before either she or Chibuzo could move, the door pushed open. Marvelous stepped in first. He stopped after one step. Behind him stood Doris, looking wide-eyed, and Tabena, Marvelous' cousin and best man, who had been helping search the hotel since morning. For one terrible second, nobody spoke. Marvelous' eyes moved slowly from Tamara's crumpled dress to the bed behind her, then to Chibuzo, who was still sitting there shirtless. Tamara had never seen a face change that way before. Marvelous was a fair, neatly dressed young man with quiet eyes and a careful nature. Even when angry, he was usually controlled. But now all the life left his face. He looked as if somebody had struck him in the chest. "Marvelous, it is not what it looks like." But even as she said it, she knew how useless those words sounded. Marvelous gave a small, painful laugh that was not laughter at all. "Not what it looks like," he repeated. "Please, please just listen to me. I do not know how I got here." Doris lifted a trembling hand to her mouth. Tabena looked away, already uncomfortable. Marvelous looked at Tamara again, and this time there was no confusion on his face, only hurt, deep open hurt. "I was looking for you everywhere." Tamara moved toward him. "Marvelous, please." He stepped back at once. That hurt more than a slap. "I woke up here. I do not remember anything. I swear to you, I do not know what happened." Marvelous looked past her at Chibuzo again. Then he looked back at the bed. The room was too silent, too full, too late. And in that one moment, Tamara knew with terrible clarity that nothing she said now would sound strong enough to fight what Marvelous had just seen with his own eyes. Everything fell apart instantly. Marvelous took one step back, then another, as if the room itself had become too dirty for him to stand in. "Please, please, just listen to me. I do not know how I got here." He looked at her as though he was struggling to breathe. "Do not," he said quietly. Tamara stopped. Marvelous' eyes were red already, though he had not cried. The pain in them was worse than tears. He looked from her face to the bed again, then to Chibuzo, who was now standing, his expression tight and guarded. "On our wedding morning, Tamara. On our wedding morning. It is not like that. I swear to you it is not. I woke up here too. I do not know this man. I do not even know how I entered this room." Doris stepped in slowly behind Marvelous. "Tamara, I do not know what happened." "Please, Marvelous, look at me," Tamara said, now speaking too fast because panic had fully taken over. "You know me. I cannot do this. I cannot. I am not that kind of woman." Marvelous gave a short laugh that sounded like pain. "You are standing in another man's room, his bed, looking like this, and you want me to do what? Pretend I am blind." Tabena, who had been silent near the door, looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we should all calm down first." "Stay out of this," Marvelous snapped. The room went quiet again. Tamara moved closer, but Marvelous stepped back immediately, like he could not bear her touch. That one movement crushed something inside her. "Please, please do not do this." "Do not do this," Marvelous repeated. I should not do this. His voice rose now. I have been looking for you since morning. My family is downstairs. Your guests are waiting. People are calling me, Tamara, asking where my bride is, and I find you here. His eyes moved to Chibuzo again. Tamara turned and looked at Chibuzo too, as if seeing him again for the first time. Strange face, strange body, strange room, strange disaster. Nothing made sense. Chibuzo folded his arms and said nothing. Marvelous shook his head slowly. No, no, no. I cannot do this. He turned toward the door. Tamara ran after him at once. Marvelous. He did not stop. Marvelous, please wait. Just give me 1 minute. Please listen to me. They came out into the corridor with Doris and Tabena following quickly behind. A cleaner standing down the hall turned to look. Tamara did not care. Her world was already burning. Marvelous kept walking. Marvelous, she cried, grabbing his arm. He pulled it away sharply. Do not touch me. Tamara stared at him. His face was wet now, but he still was not really crying. He looked angry, wounded, and deeply ashamed. I stood before everyone this morning trying to protect your name because I thought something delayed you. I was still defending you. Then defend me now, please. I do not know what happened. I swear to you. Marvelous shook his head. I cannot marry you after this. The wedding is off. No. Doris gasped softly behind them. Tabena closed his eyes for a second. Tamara stood frozen. No, it is over, Marvelous said. No, she said again, her voice tiny now. No, Marvelous, please, please do not say that. But he was already moving again. She went after him, crying now, full tears falling down her face. Marvelous, please, please do not leave like this. Please listen to me. I do not remember anything. I could never do this to you. Please. He kept going. At the lift, he finally turned back one last time. What hurts me is that if I had not found you myself, maybe you would have still gone ahead and worn that white dress. Tamara looked at him like he had slapped her. Marvelous entered the lift. The doors closed, and just like that, he was gone. For a few seconds, Tamara stood there, staring at the closed doors, unable to move. Her tears kept falling, but even crying felt far away now. She looked empty. Then something inside her snapped. She turned and walked back to the room. Doris called her name softly, but Tamara did not answer. She entered the room with burning eyes and found Chibuzo now fully dressed, buttoning his shirt as though this was just a bad morning and not the destruction of another person's life. Tamara's anger rose so fast it almost saved her from collapsing. You raped me. The words landed hard. Doris, who had followed her in, stopped at once. Chibuzo looked up sharply. What? You heard me. You raped me. Watch what you are saying. How did I end up here? How did I leave where I was and come to this room? Tell me. This is my room. You are the one who ended up here. I did not go and drag you from anywhere. You expect me to believe that, she shouted. I expect you to stop throwing around serious accusations when you do not even know what happened. Tamara's face twisted with pain. I do not know what happened. Yes, that is exactly the problem. Chibuzo looked frustrated now too. Listen to me. I woke up confused too. I did not know you were getting married. I did not know you were a stranger to me until you started shouting. But this is my room, and somehow you got here. Somehow, Tamara repeated. Somehow. He held her gaze. Yes, somehow. She hated how calm he sounded. Hated how steady his face looked while her life had just been smashed to pieces. You ruined my life. I did not force you. You do not know that. And neither do you. The room became quiet again. Those words hurt because they were true in the worst possible way. Tamara did not know. That was what was killing her. She could not remember leaving the gathering. She could not remember entering the room. She could not remember lying on that bed. She could not even remember whether she had spoken to him before anything happened. All she had was shame, blankness, and pain. She bent, picked up her remaining shoe, her clutch, and her dead phone with trembling hands. Then she looked at Doris. Let us go. Doris nodded quickly. Tamara did not look at Chibuzo again as she walked out, but before she reached the door, he spoke. If you want the truth, then find out what really happened before accusing me of something that can destroy lives. Tamara stopped for 1 second, her back still turned to him. Then she left without a word. The drive home felt unreal. Doris sat in the passenger seat while Tamara drove with stiff hands and swollen eyes. It was a miracle they reached the apartment safely because Tamara could barely see through the tears that kept gathering and clearing. Neither of them said much. When they finally got to Tamara's place, she parked inside the compound and turned off the engine. For a moment, she just sat there. Her apartment was on the top floor of a quiet, neat building. It was a cozy, beautiful place that matched the life she had built with her own hands. The sitting room had soft cream walls, warm lighting, clean furniture, and little touches of style everywhere. Nothing in the space was loud, but everything showed care. The wall art, the curtains, the simple flowers on the center table, the arrangement of chairs. All of it carried Tamara's taste. She was an interior designer, and a good one. She had built a decent name for herself over the years. She had no parents to fall back on. She was an orphan. She had lost both father and mother young, and since then life had taught her quickly how to stand on her own feet. She worked hard, earned well, drove a nice car, and had made a life that looked stable from the outside. But now, sitting in that car in front of her own home, she felt like someone who had lost everything in one morning. Doris touched her arm gently. "Tamara, let us go inside." Tamara nodded. The moment they entered the apartment, her phone came alive. Calls, one after another. Her aunties, cousins, family, friends, one uncle she had not spoken to in weeks, a churchwoman, her mother's older cousin. Everybody wanted to know the same thing. Why was the wedding suddenly cancelled? Why had Marvelous left the hotel angry? What had happened? Tamara stared at the phone like it was another enemy. It kept ringing again, again. She finally switched it off and dropped it on the sofa. "I cannot do this." Doris looked at her with concern. "Just rest first." Tamara turned and faced her. "Tell me what happened last night from the beginning. Everything you remember." They sat down. Doris spoke carefully. She said the pre-wedding gathering had been loud and lively. Everybody was drinking. Everybody was moving around. Marvelous had gone to spend time with his own friends. Some of the ladies had stayed back with Tamara. Music had been playing. There had been laughter, toasts, dancing, more drinks. "I remember you were happy," Doris said softly. "Very happy." Tamara pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Then what?" Doris shook her head. "That is the part that is not clear. I was also drinking." Tamara looked at her sharply. "Doris, I am telling you the truth," Doris said quickly. "I drank too. Not as much as you, but I did." Tamara leaned forward. "You were my chief bridesmaid. You were supposed to stay with me." "I know." "Then how did I leave a room full of people and nobody noticed?" Doris looked down. "I stepped away at some point." "Why?" "My cousin called me. There was an issue at home. I told you that already." Tamara searched her face. "For how long?" "I do not know. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe more." Tamara leaned back slowly, exhausted. Nothing made sense. Later, another friend from the gathering called from a different number since Tamara's line was off. Doris answered and put it on speaker. The woman sounded worried and confused. "Hey, it's me. I know Tamara's phone is off. That's why I'm calling from a different number." Most people were pretty drunk toward the end, not really paying attention. Someone went to their room, someone went downstairs. I just can't clearly remember when you stopped being in the middle of us. After the call ended, Tamara sat in silence. A whole room full of people, and not one person could explain how she disappeared. By afternoon, the silence in the apartment had started feeling dangerous. It gave too much room for thought. Tamara stood up suddenly. "I am going back to that hotel." Doris rose too. To do what? To get answers. The hotel manager met them in a small office downstairs. He was polite in the annoying way people become when they want to tell you no without seeming heartless. "Madam, I understand this is a difficult situation, but we cannot release CCTV footage just like that." Tamara sat on the edge of the chair, tense from head to toe. "Just like that? My life was destroyed in your hotel. Madam, please calm down. Do not tell me to calm down. My life was destroyed in your hotel. My wedding was cancelled. My name is already being dragged, and you are telling me hotel policy. There are procedures. Then follow them. It is not that simple. It is very simple, Tamara said. Check the footage. Let me see who took me there. Let me see whether I walked or whether someone led me. Let me see. There are procedures. The man folded his hands on the table. Madam, even if I want to help you, I cannot release surveillance material without approval. Get approval. It does not work that way. Tamara laughed bitterly. Of course, it never works that way when somebody needs help. Doris touched her arm, trying to calm her, but Tamara pulled her hand away. She turned back to the manager. If you do not release that footage, I will involve my lawyer. That is your right, madam. Tamara stood up at once. So that is it for now? Yes. She stared at him for a long second, waiting for some last-minute sign of human feeling. It did not come. The manager simply looked back at her with that same careful expression. Tamara picked up her bag. For the first time since waking up in that room, something deeper than panic entered her chest. This was not going to be easy. Whatever had happened the night before was buried now under shame, silence, and rules. And if she wanted the truth, she was going to have to fight for it. At almost that same time, in another part of the city, Chibuzo sat in a private office on the top floor of his company building and stared at a glass of water he had not touched. His head still hurt. The morning had been too chaotic for him to think clearly. But now that he was alone, the silence was making everything louder in his mind. The girl's face, her tears, the way she had looked at him as if he had destroyed her life. A knock came on the door. Come in. The door opened and Tabena Igwe walked in. Chibuzo's closest friend and also his lawyer. They had known each other for years. Tabena was not as flashy as Chibuzo. He was calm, sharp, and careful with words. Where Chibuzo often moved with pride and confidence, Tabena liked to pause, think, and study a matter from all sides before speaking. He shut the door behind him and came to sit opposite Chibuzo. I have been calling you. I know. And you ignored me. I needed to think. Tabena looked at him for a moment. Then think out loud now. Tell me exactly what happened. Chibuzo leaned back in his chair and pressed 2 fingers against his temple. He looked tired, but there was still something controlled in the way he sat today. He was not the kind of man who liked looking shaken in front of others, even people close to him. Chibuzo was one of those men people talked about often. He was still young, rich beyond comfort, and unmarried. He had built a very large company that had quickly become one of the biggest names in the country. He was the founder and owner, and though people liked calling him a billionaire bachelor, like it was a title, he hated how that made women, gossip blogs, and desperate families look at him like a prize to be won. That morning, however, he did not look like a prize. He looked troubled. He finally spoke. I was drinking last night. Tabena folded his arms. I assumed that much. I was not just drinking. I was very drunk. Why? Chibuzo gave a humorless smile. Do I need a reason to drink now? You do when you wake up in a scandal that can destroy your name. Chibuzo exhaled slowly and looked away. There was a meeting earlier in the evening. He said it did not go well. Then there was some family pressure too. My mother was on my neck again about marriage, about settling down, about all the women she thinks are suitable for me. I was irritated, tired. I just wanted to shut my head off. Tabena said nothing, so Chibuzo continued. I drank a lot. He paused. Then at some point, I called downstairs and told the manager to send a woman to my room. You did what? Tabena looked at him. Do not start. I am starting, Tabena said. What kind of rubbish decision is that? I know it was stupid. That does not make it less stupid. Chibuzo's jaw tightened. But he continued. I was angry. I was not thinking straight. I just wanted someone there, someone to keep me company. That was all. Tabena stared at him in disbelief. You of all people should know better than to do something like that. I know, Chibuzo said. That quiet admission was enough to slow Tabena down. He leaned back. Go on. Chibuzo looked at the desk again. When I got to the room, she was already there on the bed. Tamara. Yes. You had never seen her before. Never. And she said nothing. She said very little, from what I remember. She looked drunk too. Not unconscious, not asleep, just very drunk. He paused again before continuing. I thought she was the one they had sent. Tabena's face remained serious. I touched her, Chibuzo said quietly. She did not resist me. She did not push me away. That is why I believed it was consensual. The room went still for a moment. Tabena spoke carefully now. Did she speak clearly? Not really. Did she know who you were? I do not know. Did you ask? Chibuzo looked irritated. Tabena, I was drunk. I am trying to help you, Tabena said, his tone hardening. So answer well. Chibuzo's mouth tightened. No, I did not ask. That is bad. I did not force her. I am not saying you did. I am saying it is bad. Chibuzo looked away again. He hated how the story sounded now that he was hearing it through another person's ears. In his own head, it had felt like a drunken mistake. A terrible one, yes, but still a mistake. But once spoken aloud, it began to take on a darker shape. Tabena leaned forward. Listen to me carefully. Whether you meant harm or not, this matter is dangerous. You are not just anybody. You are Chibuzo Osahan. People watch everything you do. Your face is known. Your company is too big. One scandal like this can stain you badly. Investors do not like stories like this. Business partners do not like stories like this. The public does not care whether you were drunk or emotional. They only care about the headline. Chibuzo gave a dry laugh. So now I am a headline. You can become one by this evening. That wiped a little humor from Chibuzo's face. If that woman decides to come after you publicly, and if she says you assaulted her, it becomes even worse. Shock showed directly in Chibuzo's eyes. She already accused me. Tabena was silent for a second. Directly. Yes. What did you say? I told her to stop making dangerous accusations when she does not know the full truth. Tabena nodded slowly, thinking. There is also another angle. It might be a setup. You are rich, and women have tried to get close to you over the years. How many families would gladly throw their daughters at you if they had the chance? Too many. Exactly. So I cannot ignore the possibility that this girl may have something planned. Maybe she entered your room on purpose. Maybe she saw an opportunity. Maybe she is not as innocent as she looked. Chibuzo did not answer immediately. He remembered Tamara's face again. The shock in her eyes had not looked planned. The tears had looked real. The panic had looked real too. Still, he said, maybe. Tabena watched him. What? She did not look like someone acting. That is how many people win sympathy, by looking exactly how they should look. Chibuzo stood up from his chair and walked to the window. From there, the city looked far away and small. Cars moved like toys below. Buildings stood quiet under the afternoon light. Usually that view gave him a sense of control. Today it did nothing. She said she was getting married. She looked ruined. I heard. Tabena's expression softened a little, but his voice remained firm. Chibuzo, you are allowed to feel bad. But do not let guilt make you foolish. This is now a legal matter. Chibuzo turned back to him. So what do we do? First, I speak to hotel management myself and find out what they know. Then I watch the lady quietly. Chibuzo's face changed. Watch her how? I mean, I will find out who she is, what kind of person she is, whether she has any history of trying things like this, and whether she is already preparing a move against you. Chibuzo looked at him for a moment. Do that. Tabena nodded. And if she sues? Then we respond. Chibuzo was quiet. Tabena stood up. You need to keep your head clear from now on. No emotional decisions, no careless movements, no trying to meet her alone. Chibuzo gave him a look. I am not stupid. Tabena raised one brow. You called a hotel manager to send a woman to your room. Chibuzo did not answer that. Tabena picked up his phone from a table. I am serious. This matter can become ugly fast. And the more famous a man is, the less room he has for mistakes. Chibuzo returned to his seat slowly. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Chibuzo said, handle it. Tabena looked at him. I will. Whatever this is, handle it. Tabena nodded once. I will. He turned and walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. If there is even one small part of this story you have not told me, tell me now. There is nothing else. Tabena studied him for another moment, then left the office. The door closed behind him. Chibuzo sat alone again. He picked up the glass of water and finally drank from it. But it did not help, because no matter how much Tabena talked about possible traps, blackmail, or women trying to use his name, one thing would not leave Chibuzo's mind. Tamara had looked like someone whose life had truly broken in front of her. And for the first time since building his empire, Chibuzo found himself facing a problem money could not instantly make neat. The next morning, Tamara was leaving her apartment when she saw a man standing beside a dark car near the gate. He was tall, neatly dressed, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to serious conversations. He looked to be in his 30s, calm-faced, with sharp eyes that stuttered before they spoke. Tamara slowed down at once. The pain in her chest had not gone. Neither had anger. She had barely slept. Her head still felt heavy. Her phone was still mostly off. And her life still felt unreal. The man stepped forward. Miss Tamara Edwer. Tamara stopped fully. Who are you? My name is Tabena Igwe. She did not recognize the name. He gave a small, polite nod. I am a lawyer. Tamara's face changed immediately. A lawyer? For who? He hesitated only a second. For Mr. Chibuzo Osahoun. Tamara stared at him. The pain in her eyes changed to something sharper. How did you get this address? I can explain. No, tell me now. Please, let's talk. Please do not misunderstand. It was not difficult to find. Your details are not impossible to trace. Tamara gave a bitter laugh. Of course, rich people always know how to find people. That is not why I am here. Then why are you here? She asked coldly. Tabena glanced around. Can we have a quick, private conversation? No. It would help if we speak calmly. Tamara folded her arms. Say what you came to say. Tabena took in a breath. I am here on behalf of Mr. Chibuzo Osahoun. He wants this matter handled quietly. Handled quietly? Yes, Tabena said carefully. Everybody involved is already going through enough. The last thing anyone needs is a public scandal. My client is willing to make certain arrangements to ease things and ensure this matter does not become bigger than it already is. Tamara looked at him like she had not heard. Well, what arrangements? This is a financial settlement. A settlement? Is this a joke? So this is it? You came to pay me off. Tabena kept his tone steady. Please listen first. You want to pay me? No one is saying it that way. That is exactly what you are saying, she burst out. You want to throw money at me so I can keep quiet. That was not the intention. Then what is the intention? She demanded. Tell me what else it means when a man sleeps with a woman under such a horrible condition and then sends his lawyer with money the next morning. My client is trying to prevent unnecessary damage to both sides. Both sides. Tabena lowered the paper. I understand that you are upset. No, you do not. She stepped closer. If Chibuzo sent a lawyer with money, then he knows he did something wrong. He knows. Miss Tamara, I think emotions are high right now, and you should leave. Tabena studied her for a moment. Think about it first. I said leave. Think about it first. Going public may not help you the way you think. Is that a threat? It's advice. I don't need your advice. She took one step back and pointed toward the gate. Leave. Tabena held her gaze a second longer. Then he put the paper back into the folder. I will go, he said. But if you change your mind, I will not. He nodded once and turned away. Tamara stood there until he entered his car and drove off. Then she looked down at her shaking hands. Now it was clear to her. Chibuzo was not just careless. He was trying to bury the matter. And if he was trying to bury it, then maybe he truly had something to hide. Later that afternoon, Tamara sat alone in her living room and tried once again to call Marvelous. The call rang. Then it cut. She stared at the screen and called again. This time he picked. Her heart rose painfully. Marvelous. I told you not to call me. His voice was cold, colder than she had ever heard it. Please, Tamara said quickly. Please, just listen to me for 1 minute. Just 1 minute. I have nothing to hear from you. Please just listen to me for 1 minute. I've been trying to find out what happened. And you expect me to care? The words hit hard. Tamara swallowed. You know me. There was a bit of silence from his end. Then he said, I thought I did. She closed her eyes. Please, she whispered. Marvelous laughed once, dry and cruel. The whole city is probably laughing at me already. Please don't talk to me like that. Why not? You deserve it. This is so humiliating. That is not what happened. Oh, really? Then what happened? Tamara's lips trembled. I do not know yet. That is your problem, he said. His voice dropped lower then, and what came next cut even deeper because it was spoken with so much disgust. I want nothing to do with you anymore. You're nothing but a... The line went dead. Tamara stared at the phone. For a few seconds, she did not move. Then her knees weakened and she sat down hard on the sofa and broke into heavy, painful tears. She cried until her throat hurt. Cried until her chest felt too tight. Cried until she could barely breathe. When she could finally hold the phone properly, she called Doris. Doris came almost immediately. The moment she entered and saw Tamara's face, she rushed to her. Tamara. Tamara leaned into her and cried again. Doris held her tightly. What happened? Tamara barely formed the words. Doris, I called Marvelous. What did he say? He called me a... She could not finish. Don't hold on to Marvelous words. He's just angry and embarrassed. It's over. I know it's over, Tamara. Please. Doris stayed quiet. After a long silence, Tamara finally spoke again. He sent a lawyer to me. Doris looked up. Who? That man, Chibuzo's lawyer. What did he want? To offer money. To settle it quietly. Doris's eyes widened. He did that. Tamara nodded. The lawyer came to my gate offering money like I was some cheap problem to be removed. That means they are scared. Exactly. Doris's voice grew stronger. Tamara, don't you dare back down. You are stronger than this. We will face this together. Tamara wiped her face slowly. They think because he has money and power, he can silence me, she said. They think I will just cry and go away. Doris squeezed her hand. Will you? Tamara lifted her head. Something in her was changing now. The pain was still there, but beneath it, resolve was beginning to form. No. Doris watched her carefully. Then what will you do? Tamara looked toward the dark television screen in front of her, but she was not really seeing it. I will sue him. Doris nodded at once. Good. Tamara turned back to her, eyes still swollen but steadier now. Even if I cannot remember every single thing, I know something is wrong. I know I did not choose that. The life I had before that morning is gone. I cannot let them by my silence. Doris's grip on her hand tightened. Then fight. Marvelous rejection had done something final inside Tamara. It had removed the last hope that this could quietly heal on its own. Now there was only one thing left, the truth, or at least the fight for it. The matter moved quickly after that. Tamara got a lawyer, a woman named Barrister Adeyemi, who spoke firmly and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had stood in many difficult rooms before. She listened to the whole story without rushing Tamara once. When Tamara finished, Adeyemi sat back and said quietly, "This will not be easy, but easy is not the same thing as impossible." That was enough for Tamara. The case first went into hearing and mediation. The room was cold and formal in a way that made pain feel smaller than procedure. Tamara sat with Barrister Adeyemi on one side. Across from them sat Chibuzo and Tabena. It was the first time Tamara had seen Chibuzo since the hotel. He looked composed, neat in a dark suit, clean-shaven, rich and calm in that way powerful men often looked when the room was built to listen to them. It made Tamara angrier just to see him. He looked at her too, but whatever he felt did not fully show. When Tamara was asked to speak, her hands were cold. She told them she did not remember how she entered Chibuzo's room. She said she had no reason to go there. She said she woke up confused, ashamed, and broken on the very morning of her wedding. Then her voice shook, but she still forced the words out. Even if I cannot remember every moment, my body was used without proper consent because I was not in a state to give it. The room went quiet. Barrister Adeyemi spoke next, strong and clear. My client is not a loose woman, but a working woman with dignity. Her wedding was destroyed overnight. She was in a tragic situation she does not even remember entering. Tamara nearly cried from the relief of hearing someone speak for her like that. Then Tabena stood. His tone was polite, but the words still stung. I acknowledge intimacy occurred, but I reject the claim of a crime without evidence of force. Both parties were intoxicated. Both parties were not in a clear state of mind. A terrible mistake happened, yes, but one mistake should not automatically become a criminal act without proof. Barrister Adeyemi answered sharply. When a woman is too intoxicated to understand what is happening, that is not a small mistake. Tabena replied, when a man is also intoxicated and believes he is with a willing adult, that too must be considered. We cannot replace proof with emotion. That line stayed with Tamara. Proof with emotion, as if pain was some weak thing that could not stand beside fact. Then came the worst moment. Chibuzo was asked to speak. He sat straight and said in a controlled voice, she appeared drunk, yes, but she was responsive. Tamara turned to look at him slowly. Responsive. That was the word he chose. Barrister Adeyemi objected immediately and reminded the room again that response under intoxication did not equal meaningful consent. But the damage had been done. Tamara felt stripped by that one word, responsive, as if she had danced into it, as if what had happened to her could be reduced to one ugly sentence by a man in a good suit. The hearing dragged on. Every statement seemed to demand proof Tamara did not have. Did anyone see her being forced? No, it was just us. Was there any footage? No, there wasn't. Did he claim force? No. Tamara sat there and slowly began to understand something bitter. The law liked certainty. Pain was not enough. Confusion was not enough. A destroyed wedding was not enough. Not remembering was not enough. By the time the ruling came, Tamara already knew from the faces in the room that things were not going in the direction she had hoped. The claim is weakened by insufficient proof, and the matter remains unclear due to mutual intoxication. There was not enough proof to sustain the full weight of what she was alleging. Then another wound came. Chibuzo's side also pushed back, saying he was being falsely accused and that his name was being harmed. Tamara sat still through it all, but inside she felt herself cracking again. By the time she stepped out of that place, the sun outside looked too bright for what had just happened. Barrister Adeyemi spoke beside her. Tamara, I know it's tough, but we have options. I just don't know anymore. We'll appeal. I'll file the papers this week. It won't change anything. It keeps hope alive. We'll talk soon. Tamara barely heard her. She walked down the steps slowly, like someone much older than herself. She had been stripped twice. First by the incident, then by the system. And somehow, standing there under the open sky, she felt even more alone than she had felt in that hotel room. The days that followed were worse than Tamara expected. At first, she thought the pain would stay inside her chest alone. She thought it would be something private, something she could at least carry quietly. But shame was never quiet. People talked. They talked in soft voices when she passed. They talked on phone calls they thought would not reach her ears. They talked in offices, in family groups, in salons, in church circles, and in the spaces between fake concern and real enjoyment. Some people said her wedding was cancelled because she had always been too free. Some said she must have had a secret lover all along. Some said no decent woman would wake up in another man's bed on her wedding morning unless she had planned it. Others said Marvelous was lucky he found out before the marriage. Every version of the story was crueler than the last. Tamara began to understand that once people got a story they enjoyed, they no longer cared whether it was true. One afternoon, she went to her office after several days away. The moment she stepped in, she felt the change. The receptionist greeted her too carefully. Two junior designers who usually laughed with her suddenly became very busy with their laptops. Someone in the corridor lowered her voice the second Tamara passed. It all looked normal on the surface, but it was not. Tamara entered her office and shut the door. She sat down, but she could not focus. Every sound outside seemed to carry meaning now. After some time, her intercom buzzed. Her boss wanted to see her. Mr. Oconta was the owner of the firm. He was a polite man in his late 50s, careful in speech, and very protective of the company's public image. He had always respected Tamara because she worked hard, brought in good clients, and knew her job well. That day, however, he could not look her in the eye for long. "Sit down, Tamara," he said gently. "She Saturday." He folded his hands and cleared his throat. "I will not pretend I do not know what has been happening." Tamara said nothing. "I'm sorry for what you are going through." She gave a small nod. Mr. Oconta sighed. "This is difficult for me too, Tamara. I need you to take some time off." "A week, sir." "For now, indefinite leave." The words landed slowly. Her face changed. "Indefinite?" "Yes." She stared at him. He rushed to explain. "Tamara, this isn't a dismissal. I want to be clear. The matter has drawn a lot of attention. The company's trying to protect itself. This is for the best, I assure you. Some clients have started asking questions. A few projects are already shaky. It is affecting the company's reputation." Tamara looked down at her hands. She wanted to ask him what exactly she had done to deserve this. She wanted to ask why the burden always seemed to fall on the person already broken, but the words did not come out. Instead, she just nodded once. Mr. Oconta leaned forward. "Take time. Rest. Let things calm down." Tamara rose slowly. "Thank you, sir." He looked like he wanted to say more, but there was nothing useful left. She walked out of his office with her dignity hanging by a thread. By the time she got into her car, her eyes were already wet. To everyone else, it was indefinite leave. To her, it felt like punishment. Another clean, polite punishment for a disaster she never planned. That evening, she tried Marvelous again. She knew she should not. She knew every call was turning into another wound. But part of her still hoped that if he heard how much had happened, if he heard how badly the legal hearing had gone, he might finally remember the woman he had once loved. He picked on the third ring. Tamara almost cried from relief. "Marvelous. What do you want?" His voice was flat. She held her breath. "I lost the hearing." There was silence. Then he said, "So?" The single word hurt more than shouting would have. Tamara sat down slowly on the edge of her bed. "You cannot talk to me like this forever." "Why not?" "Because you know me." "No," Marvelous said. "I knew the woman I wanted to marry. I do not know this one." Tamara closed her eyes. "I have told you many times. I do not remember what happened." "And I have told you," he said coldly, "that I do not care anymore." She pressed her fingers against her forehead. "Marvelous, please. Everything is falling apart." "That is not my concern." "Please do not say that." His laugh was bitter. "What do you want from me now?" "Sympathy. I want the man who loved me to at least ask what really happened." Marvelous was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You should have thought about all that before sleeping with another man." Tamara felt the tears come again. "You know that is not fair." "Fair?" His voice rose. "Was it fair to me? Was it fair that I stood before people like a fool while my bride was in bed with another man?" Tamara could not speak. Marvelous lowered his voice again, but it was even more cruel now because it was calm. "Stop calling me, Tamara. Whatever happened to you now, face it yourself." The call ended. Tamara lowered the phone slowly. This time, she did not cry immediately. She just sat there with tears sliding down her face, feeling empty in a new way. Maybe this was what it meant for people's opinions to rewrite your life. One morning, you were a bride. A few days later, you were a lesson, a warning, a disgrace. Florence was the one who did not let her sink completely. Florence Oud had worked with Tamara for years. She was not loud, not dramatic, not the kind of friend who always wanted to be in the center of things. She was simple, kind, and steady. She had a calm face and a quiet way of speaking that made people feel safer than they realized. Tamara had always liked her, but now she came to value her in a different way. Florence showed up without noise. She brought food and left it in the kitchen. She sat with Tamara through long silences without forcing conversation. She answered relatives' questions when Tamara could not bear to. She reminded her to bathe, to drink water, to open the curtains. One evening, she found Tamara staring at nothing in the living room. "Tamara, you haven't touched your food." "I'm not hungry." "Tamara, you need strength, hungry or not." Tamara gave a tired smile that vanished almost at once. Florence sat opposite her. "Talk to me." Tamara looked away. "There is nothing left to say." "There is plenty left to say," Florence replied gently. "You just do not want to say it." Tamara's throat tightened. "Everyone has already decided who I am." Loud talk does not become truth just because it is loud. Don't help them bury you. Those words stayed with Tamara because lately every day felt like burial. On Chibuzo's side, things looked very different. He had won. That was what everyone around him said. Tabena told him the worst had been avoided. Some of his business people, the few who knew, said it was good the matter did not go too far. One friend even laughed and said, "You escaped." But Chibuzo did not feel like someone who had escaped. He felt restless. The hearing replayed in his head when he was alone. Tamara's face, her voice, the way she had gone still after he said she was responsive. He had not said it to insult her. He had said it because that was how he remembered it. But now the word disturbed him too. He tried to throw himself into work, but his concentration broke often. He found himself asking questions he had not wanted to ask before. What if she truly had no idea how she got there? What if the damage done to her was bigger than the version he kept defending in his head? What if he had not meant evil, but had still been part of something terrible? That discomfort followed him for days until, in one moment of weakness, or guilt, or confusion, he sent her a gift. It was expensive, too expensive. A designer bracelet in a velvet box, delivered with flowers and a short note. "I am sorry for everything." When the gift arrived at Tamara's apartment, Florence happened to be there. Tamara looked at the box, then at the note, and her face hardened immediately. This man is mad. Did he send it? Maybe he feels bad. He can feel bad from far away. She picked up her phone and sent one message to the number on the card attached to the package. "Do not ever send me anything again. Keep your gift and your guilt to yourself." Then she told the delivery man to take everything back. When Chibuzo got the returned gift later that day, he sat staring at it for a long time. Tabena, who happened to be in his office, noticed. She rejected it. Chibuzo did not answer. "What did you expect? You keep acting from guilt, not sense. You won the matter. Let it rest." But Chibuzo could not. Not fully. Something in him had started leaning toward Tamara. Not as scandal, not as threat, but as a wound he could not stop looking at. Tamara's next shock came on a Saturday evening. She had gone out for the first time in days, just to clear her head. Florence had practically forced her to leave the house for some air. They stopped at a quiet restaurant lounge, hoping it would be peaceful. It was not. Tamara saw them before they saw her. Marvelous and Doris. They were seated together in a corner, closer than two people casually talking. Marvelous was leaning in. Doris was smiling in that soft way Tamara had seen before, but never attached to him. For a second, Tamara could not move. Florence followed her gaze and went still too. "Oh no," Florence whispered. Tamara's body turned cold. She had expected many things. Not that. Not Doris. Not the same friend who had stood beside her in lace and makeup, the friend who had held her phone and lipstick and bridal list, the friend who had been there before the wedding morning. Doris saw her first. The smile disappeared from her face. Marvelous turned too. The moment he saw Tamara, his expression tightened. Florence touched Tamara's hand. "Let us go." But it was too late for that. Tamara was already walking toward them. She stopped at their table and looked from one face to the other. For some seconds, she could not even speak. Then she said quietly, "So it is true." Nobody answered at first. Florence stood behind her, tense. Tamara looked at Doris. Since when? Doris sat up straighter. She looked uncomfortable for only a moment. Then slowly that discomfort faded. Tamara, don't say my name like we are still friends. Marvelous stood up. This is not the place. No, Tamara said, her eyes still on Doris. This is exactly the place, since both of you clearly have no shame. Marvelous' face darkened. Watch your mouth. Florence stepped forward. Marvelous, do not do that. He ignored her. Tamara laughed weakly, but there was no joy in it. My chief bridesmaid. Doris looked away for 1 second, then back. Something changed in her face too. Maybe it was tiredness. Maybe it was guilt finally becoming defiance. You want the truth? Doris asked. Tamara stared at her. Doris gave a small shrug. I have always liked Marvelous. The words landed slowly. Tamara blinked. What? I liked him first, Doris said. Long before the two of you became serious. Marvelous looked uncomfortable now, but he did not stop her. Tamara's voice dropped. You are lying. I am not. Doris leaned back in her chair, her eyes no longer apologetic. But he wanted you. He always wanted you. Tamara looked at Marvelous. He looked away. Her heart began to pound. Doris continued. After you disgraced Marvelous publicly, whether you meant to or not, he needed someone who actually cared. Florence let out a disbelieving laugh. What nonsense are you saying? Doris turned to her sharply. Stay out of it. Florence folded her arms. I will not. But Tamara still looked only at Doris. So that is what this is? She asked, comforting him. Doris gave a dry smile. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped pretending. Tamara felt something heavy collapse inside her. Doris had been there through everything. Through the planning, through the wedding preparations, through her tears, through Marvelous insults, through the legal battle, and now this. Were you ever really my friend? Tamara asked, for the first time. Doris did not answer quickly. Then she said, I was, but I was also human. Florence's face hardened. That is rubbish. Doris looked at Tamara with a coldness she had never shown before. Honestly, Tamara, you have no right to complain. Tamara stared at her as if she had spoken another language. After what happened and the way things turned out, you can't still be acting like some innocent victim in everything. Marvelous shifted, but he still said nothing. Those words hurt worse than Tamara expected. Not because they were true, but because they came from someone who knew how shattered she already was and still chose to step on the broken parts. Florence spoke now, her voice sharp. Doris, you are a wicked person. Doris rolled her eyes. Please. Tamara looked at Marvelous one last time. And you? He held her gaze for a second, then looked away again. That was answer enough. Tamara nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Her voice was very quiet now, too quiet. She turned and walked away before the tears could fall in front of them. Florence quickly followed her. By the time they reached the car, Tamara was shaking so badly Florence had to take the keys from her hand. I will drive, Florence said gently. Tamara did not argue. She got into the passenger seat and sat stiffly, staring ahead as the first tears slipped down again. Not loud tears, not even angry ones, just the kind that came when something inside a person finally accepted a painful truth. Some of the people closest to her had never really been for her. And somehow that betrayal hurt almost as much as the morning that started all of this. When they got home, Florence helped her inside. Sit, Florence said gently. Tamara sat down on the sofa like someone who had forgotten how to use her own strength. Florence went to the kitchen and came back with water. Drink. Tamara obeyed without argument. That was how broken she was. For a few days after that, she moved through life like a shadow. She barely ate. She slept badly. Her head hurt often. Sometimes she felt weak without understanding why. At first, she thought it was stress. With everything that had happened, it made sense. Her body was tired. Her heart was tired. Her whole life was tired. But then the nausea started. It came in the morning first, then later in the day. One afternoon, she was in the bathroom, bent over the sink, shaking after vomiting, when Florence, who had stopped by again, stood at the door and looked at her carefully. How long has this been happening? Florence asked. Tamara rinsed her mouth and avoided her eyes. A few days. Florence was quiet. Then she said softly, Tamara, when last did you see your period? Tamara froze. The room went silent. She lifted her face slowly and looked at Florence in the mirror. No. Florence did not speak. No, Tamara said again, this time more faintly. No. But even as she said it, fear had already entered her eyes. They went to the hospital the next morning. Tamara sat in the waiting area with cold hands and a colder heart. She did not speak much. Florence stayed beside her the whole time. When the doctor finally confirmed it, Tamara felt like the room moved away from her. Tamara, the test is positive. You're pregnant. The words sat in the air like a sentence. Tamara blinked slowly. How many weeks? The doctor told her. Tamara lowered her head. There was no need to ask who the father was. There was only one possible answer. After the appointment, Florence drove her home because Tamara could not hold the steering wheel without shaking. The whole ride was silent. When they got into the apartment, Tamara walked straight into her room and sat on the edge of the bed. Florence remained by the door for a moment, then came in and sat beside her. Tamara laughed once. It was a small, broken sound. My life is over. Florence shook her head quickly. Do not say that. Tamara looked at her. How do I not say it? She placed one hand on her stomach, not with affection, but with shock. This is not just a scandal anymore. It is a child. And the truth of that landed with even more force than the pregnancy itself. A child from that night. Florence did not speak. Tamara looked away again, tears rising. I cannot even explain my own life to myself anymore. Florence reached for her hand. But Tamara was already slipping deeper into panic. The thought would not leave her. A child, not just shame, not just gossip, not just a wedding she lost. Now something living was growing inside her. And whether she wanted it or not, it tied her forever to that night. It took her 2 days to gather the courage to contact Chibuzo. She did not want to see him. The thought alone made her feel sick. But she could not keep something like this to herself forever. Chibuzo, I need to see you. Please come to my house. Is everything all right? Tamara almost laughed at the foolishness of the question. No, she said. Everything is not all right. He came that evening. When Florence opened the door and saw him, her face hardened immediately. She stepped aside only because Tamara had already made up her mind. Chibuzo entered quietly. He looked neat as always, expensive watch, clean shirt, composed face. But the moment he saw Tamara sitting in the living room, he seemed to understand that this was not a small meeting. She looked pale, tired, not angry in the sharp way he was used to seeing, just worn. Florence stood nearby with folded arms. Chibuzo looked from one woman to the other. What happened, Tamara? Chibuzo, I'm pregnant. The words sat between them. Chibuzo stared at her. For one long second, he said nothing. Then he let out a breath and looked away, as if his mind needed a moment to catch up. When did you find out? Yesterday. He nodded once, slowly, then looked back at her. And then he asked the question that made her chest burn. Are you sure it is mine? Florence made a sound of disbelief. Tamara stared at him. Excuse me. Chibuzo raised one hand slightly. I have to ask. Tamara stood up at once. You have to ask. His voice stayed low, careful. But that only made it worse. Tamara, I am not insulting you. I am saying I have to be sure. Her face twisted with pain. Be sure. Florence stepped in. What exactly are you trying to say? Chibuzo looked at Florence, then back at Tamara. I am saying this is not a small matter. Tamara laughed bitterly. Of course, now it is suddenly not a small matter. Chibuzo's jaw tightened. Do not do that. No, you do not do that, she snapped. You do not stand in my house and ask me if the pregnancy is yours after everything. He looked frustrated now. I'm trying to be realistic here. Realistic? Yes. I'm not ready to be a father. There it was. Raw, ugly, honest, and still cruel. Tamara stared at him as if she had just been slapped again. I am not ready, he repeated, this time quieter. This is too much. Everything has already gone too far. She pressed her lips together so hard they shook. Chibuzo continued, and each word made it worse. Tamara, if you want, I can support you financially. It's no trouble. Support me. I don't need your pity or your money. If you decide not to keep the pregnancy, I can handle everything. Florence stepped forward immediately. Get out. Chibuzo looked at her. I am only trying. Get out, Florence said again. Tamara was no longer crying, yet she had gone too still. So that is it, she said. Chibuzo turned back to her. That is not what I mean. That is exactly what you mean. Her voice was shaking now, but there was no mistaking the hurt in it. You think because money has solved everything in your life, it should solve this too. Chibuzo rubbed his forehead. Tamara, you doubted me, told me you were not ready, then offered me money to get rid of my child. Our child. Our child, he corrected without thinking. Tamara laughed through her tears. Do not call it that. Don't call it that. Not after what you just said. For the first time since entering the house, he looked like he understood the full weight of how badly he had handled it, but it was already too late. Tamara pointed to the door. Leave. He did not move at first. Tamara, leave. This time, her voice was firmer. Chibuzo looked at her for another second, then at Florence, who was still glaring at him like she would throw him out herself if he delayed one more moment. Without another word, he turned and walked out. The door shut behind him, and Tamara broke. She bent forward with a sound Florence would never forget. It was not just crying. It was the sound of a person whose last thread had snapped. Florence rushed to her and held her tightly. Tamara cried into her shoulder, shaking from head to toe. He thinks I'm nothing, just something to use and throw away. I know, Tamara. I know. He doubted me, in my own house. He wants me to remove the pregnancy. Florence closed her eyes. I know. Tamara cried until her whole body felt weak. That night, she did not eat. She lay in bed, staring into the dark, and feeling like her future had become a room with no door. The days after that were the hardest yet. Tamara began seriously thinking about abortion. She did not say it lightly at first. She said it like someone testing a terrible truth. Then she said it more often. I cannot do this alone. How will I explain this child? Every time I look at the baby, will I not remember that night? What kind of life is this? Florence never shouted at her, never judged her, never forced any answer on her. One evening, they sat together in the living room, and Tamara spoke with both hands around a mug of tea she had barely touched. I used to plan my life carefully. Everything. Florence listened. I worked so hard to build this home. I chose the wedding colors, the chairs, the flowers, every detail. I knew where I was going. Now everything is happening to me without my permission. Florence nodded slowly. I know. Tamara looked down at her stomach. If I keep this child, I am tying myself forever to the worst thing that ever happened to me. Florence was silent for a moment before answering. Maybe, she said softly. Or maybe you are tying yourself to someone who did not ask to be part of the worst thing. Tamara did not speak. Florence continued carefully. I'm not telling you to keep the child or not to keep it. Only that pain must not be allowed to make the whole decision by itself. Tamara's eyes overflowed. I'm so scared. I know. I'm so ashamed. I know. I feel so abandoned. I know. Tamara finally started crying again, but this time it was not loud. It was tired crying, the kind that came from having no more energy left to fight your own thoughts. Florence stayed with her through all of it. There were days Tamara woke up and felt sure she could not go through with the pregnancy. Then there were moments she found herself resting a hand on her stomach without realizing it. One afternoon, she stood alone in front of her bathroom mirror after washing her face. The house was quiet. Florence had just left. Tamara looked at herself for a long time. Then slowly, almost by instinct, her palm moved down and rested over her lower stomach. She froze. The touch was light, careful, confused. Her eyes filled again. She was still undecided, still scared, still angry, still not ready to call this child a blessing. But for the first time since hearing the doctor's words, something inside her softened, just a little. Not toward the night, never toward the pain, but toward the small life that had somehow begun in the middle of it. Chibuzo could not rest. For days, he tried to throw himself into work the way he always did when life became uncomfortable. Meetings, calls, site visits, reports, signing documents, giving instructions, moving from one problem to another until there was no time left to feel. But this one stayed. It sat quietly behind everything. Even when people were talking to him, part of his mind kept drifting back to Tamara's face in her living room. The way she looked at him after he asked if the pregnancy was really his. The way she pointed to the door. The way he left, knowing he had said the worst possible things to a woman already hanging by a thread. Tabena noticed the change before Chibuzo admitted it. They were in Chibuzo's office one afternoon when Tabena dropped a file on the desk and looked at him carefully. "You're not really here." "I'm fine." "I know you too well for that." "I'm handling it." Tabena gave him a long look. Chibuzo looked away toward the window. The silence stretched. Then Tabena said quietly, "Is it still about her?" Chibuzo did not answer at once. Finally, he said, "Do you remember my mother's younger cousin, Auntie F?" Tabena frowned slightly, then nodded. "The one who used to stay with your family when you were younger?" "Yes." "What about her?" Chibuzo's face changed. The hard control he usually wore became thinner. "When I was 15, something happened to Auntie F on her way home from work." Tabena kept looking out the window. She was coming back from work one evening. A man forced himself on her. Tabena's face tightened. She cried, fought, went to the police. "My family tried, but we had no money then. No strong connections. No one listened for long. The man's people had influence. They buried it." He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "I still remember the way F changed. She stopped talking the same way, stopped smiling freely. Everybody knew something had been taken from her, even though no one could give it back." Tabena was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, "I did not know it stayed with you like that." "It stayed," Chibuzo said. "I hated that man without even knowing him." His eyes darkened. "And now this whole matter with Tamara, it keeps dragging that memory out again." Tabena exhaled slowly. Chibuzo turned back to him. "Tabena, I need you to know I did not force Tamara. I remember everything clearly. But maybe, without meaning to, I took something from her. That's a weight I can't carry." The words sat heavily between them. Tabena lowered himself into the chair opposite him. "That is not a small thing to carry." Tamara's wedding ended. Her name was dragged. She is carrying a child she never planned. And I stood there talking about her being responsive, but that word is in my head now. Guilt can twist things. This is not just guilt. What is it then? Chibuzo leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I do not know, but I cannot shake the feeling that the truth is still incomplete." Florence could not shake that feeling either. Unlike Tamara, she had not reached a point of surrender. The more people said it was over, the more Florence felt it was not. Something in the whole story still refused to sit well inside her. The blankness in Tamara's memory. The way Doris disappeared when she was needed most. The hotel's refusal to release footage. Too many things felt wrong. So Florence kept asking questions. She spoke to someone who knew someone in hotel management. That person led her to another person who worked with their security system. It took calls, begging, pressure, and one favor from an old schoolmate. But eventually she got a quiet message. There was footage, not everything, but enough. Florence did not call Tamara immediately. She first went herself to meet the man in a cramped office behind a shop 2 streets away from the hotel. He was nervous the entire time. "This can cost me my job," he said. Florence nodded. "I understand. You did not get it from me. You have my word." He plugged in a drive and opened the first video. Florence watched, then stopped breathing properly. A few minutes later, her hands were shaking as she picked up her phone and called Tamara. "Where are you?" she asked. "Tamara, you have to come out now. I'll send the address." Tamara heard something in her voice and sat up at once. "Florence, what happened?" "Just come. I am sending you the address." Tamara arrived 25 minutes later. The moment she entered the tiny office and saw Florence's face, her stomach turned. "What is it?" Florence did not speak at once. She just pointed to the chair beside her. Tamara sat down. The man from security stepped back. "I will leave you ladies to it." When the door shut behind him, Florence finally looked at Tamara. "I found something." Tamara's heart began to pound. Florence opened the file. "This is from that night." Tamara went cold. The footage was from the hotel lounge area, grainy, but clear enough. The music was silent in the clip, but the movement told its own story. Tamara saw herself sitting with a glass in hand, smiling faintly, clearly relaxed, clearly unaware. Doris sat beside her. They watched as Doris looked around, leaned closer, and then, with a movement so small it could have been missed by anyone not looking carefully, emptied something from her hand into Tamara's drink. Tamara stopped breathing. "No. No." Florence paused the video. Tamara stared at the screen. "No." Florence's eyes were wet too. "I know." "No. Play the footage again." Florence did. Again, they watched it. Again, Doris looked around. Again, Doris slipped something into the drink. Again, Tamara, unaware, lifted the glass later and drank from it. Tamara pressed one hand to her mouth. Her whole body began to shake. Florence clicked to another clip. This time it showed Doris helping Tamara up. Sometime later, Tamara looked weak. Her steps were off. Her head kept falling forward. Doris was supporting her, but not with concern. There was something hurried, watchful, almost calculating in the way she moved. Another clip. Doris standing in a hallway, phone pressed to her ear, angry, pacing. Though there was no sound, it was clear she was waiting for someone. Another clip. Doris leaving Tamara briefly on a chair near a side passage and walking away quickly. Another clip. Tamara getting up in a dazed state, moving the wrong direction, touching the wall as she walked, then disappearing out of view. Florence paused it. The room was silent. Tamara's eyes stayed fixed on the screen, but now she was no longer really seeing it. She was seeing her life rearrange itself in a terrible new shape. Doris did this. Florence nodded slowly. Yes. Tamara's breathing became shallow. She did this to me. Florence reached for her hand. Tamara. Tamara yanked her hand back and stood up suddenly. Everything inside her was trembling. Doris. Florence stood too. Tamara, wait. We need to think. No. I need to see Doris now. But rushing won't help. I can't wait any longer. They found Doris that same evening. She was at Marvelous' apartment. Florence drove because Tamara was in no state to handle the wheel. On the way there, neither of them said much. Tamara held the flash drive so tightly it almost bent in her palm. When Marvelous opened the door and saw them, surprise flashed across his face. What are you doing here? Tamara did not answer him. She looked past him and saw Doris inside. Doris rose from the sofa slowly. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Tamara stepped in. We need to talk. Marvelous looked between them. What is going on? Why are you here? Because I know. Doris's face changed very slightly, but enough. Florence shut the door behind them. Marvelous frowned. Know what? Tamara took out the drive and held it up. I know what you did. Doris looked at the drive, then back at Tamara. I do not know what you are talking about. Florence gave a short, hard laugh. Enough. Marvelous' face tightened. Somebody should explain. Tamara's voice rose for the first time. She drugged me. Marvelous looked at Doris sharply. What? Doris let out a dry laugh. Tamara, are you serious right now? Florence moved forward. We saw the footage. The room changed instantly. Marvelous stared at Doris. Doris said nothing. Tamara's eyes filled, but the tears did not fall yet. You put something in my drink. That is ridiculous. Florence plugged the drive into the television on the wall without asking anyone. Her hands were steady now. Anger had steadied them. A few seconds later, the footage began to play. Marvelous watched. Doris watched too. Nobody spoke until the first clip ended. Marvelous turned to Doris slowly. Tell me that is not what it looks like. Doris's mouth opened, then closed. Florence played the second clip, then the third. By the end, Marvelous had gone pale. Tamara looked at Doris like she no longer knew the person in front of her. Why? Doris looked away. Why? Tamara shouted now. Marvelous stepped toward Doris. Answer her. Doris snapped suddenly. Because you took everything. The room went still. Tamara stared. You always had to be the one, she said. The better one. The chosen one. You took everything from me, Tamara. You were always the better one. The chosen one. And Marvelous, he always wanted you. What are you saying? Marvelous asked. Doris laughed bitterly. You liked her. You always liked her. Even when I was there, even when I made myself available, it was always Tamara. Marvelous stepped back slightly, as if the truth had slapped him too. Doris pointed at Tamara. She took what should have been mine. Tamara looked at her in disbelief. Marvelous is not a thing to be taken. Doris ignored her. I only wanted to disgrace Tamara just enough to make Marvelous leave her. Just enough. You hear the cruelty in that. Doris's breathing was rough now. Her control was slipping. I had planned it, she said. I found someone. He was supposed to meet me there. He was supposed to take you to another room. He was supposed to sleep with you and record it. Marvelous closed his eyes for a second. Tamara felt like the floor was moving. Florence said quietly, My God. Doris laughed again, but this time it sounded broken. But he was late. The plan went wrong. He kept saying he was on the way. I left Tamara for a few minutes to sort things out. When I came back, Tamara was gone. Tamara's mouth parted slowly. Doris looked straight at her now. You wandered off before I could bring you back. The words landed like iron. Tamara sat down because her legs gave way. Florence moved to her immediately. Marvelous looked sick. So everything that happened after that, I didn't know Tamara would end up with that man. Tamara looked up at her with tears finally falling. You set me up. You destroyed my life. Doris's face hardened again, almost as if shame had turned into defense. I did not force that man to touch Tamara. Florence stepped forward so fast Marvelous had to hold her back. Liar. You monster. Florence, stop. This won't end well. Doris shouted back. I only wanted Marvelous to know who Tamara really is. Tamara rose slowly this time. Her face was wet, but her voice came out clear. And what am I? Doris opened her mouth. Tamara took one step toward her. What am I, Doris? Your friend, your rival, your mistake? What exactly was I to you all this time? Doris looked away. Tamara's voice broke. Doris, I loved you. That line hit harder than the shouting. Marvelous lowered his head. Tamara wiped her face roughly. You watched me cry, held me while I broke, and comforted me, knowing the truth. Doris said nothing. She had no defense left. Tamara nodded slowly. I do not ever want to see you again. Then she turned and walked out before her body failed her. Florence followed immediately. Behind them, Marvelous' voice rose at Doris for the first time, full of disgust. But Tamara did not stay to hear the rest. She had heard enough. By the next day, the truth had spread. Not to the whole world in some loud public way, but to the people who mattered. Marvelous knew. Florence knew. Tabena knew. The lawyers knew. Some family members knew. The version of Tamara as some shameless bride began to crack. It did not undo everything, but it changed the shape of the story. Marvelous called 3 times. Tamara did not answer. Doris sent messages. Tamara blocked her. When Tabena got the footage, he went straight to Chibuzo. They watched it together in silence. When the screen went dark, Chibuzo remained seated for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the window. So she was telling the truth, he said quietly. Tabena rose too. Yes. Chibuzo did not turn. She did not go there by choice. No. She was drugged, abandoned, and left exposed. Tabena did not answer. He did not need to. Chibuzo closed his eyes briefly. Now it was all clear. Tamara had not been careless. She had been betrayed, trapped, used by someone she trusted, and he, drunk and foolish, had stepped into the middle of that betrayal and become part of her ruin. Something changed fully in him. Then the last part of him that had still been defending himself more than seeing her pain finally gave way. He went to see her that evening. Florence opened the door and did not look pleased. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to her." "She does not need you." "I know," he said quietly, "but I still need to talk to her." Florence was about to shut the door when Tamara's voice came from inside. "Let him in." Chibuzo entered slowly. Tamara sat on the sofa wrapped in a light shawl. Though the room was not cold, she looked tired, not angry in the way she used to, just tired in a deep place. He stopped a few feet away from her. "I saw the footage." Tamara gave a small nod. "Good." Silence stretched. Then Chibuzo said, "I'm sorry." Tamara looked at him. "For what exactly?" He swallowed. "I'm sorry for not believing enough that something bigger had happened, for how I spoke to you, for doubting you, for standing on the wrong side of your pain." Her face did not soften. "I cannot change what happened," he said. "But I know now that you were trapped. I know you were betrayed." Tamara's eyes stayed on him. "So what exactly am I supposed to do with this new understanding of yours?" "Nothing," he said honestly. "You do not owe me forgiveness." Florence, standing by the doorway, folded her arms. Chibuzo continued, "I only want to do right by you now, in whatever way you will allow." Tamara laughed faintly. "Now?" "Yes, now." She looked down for a second. "You are late." "I know." That honesty was new. She noticed it. But pain did not disappear because a man finally found the right words. "Chibuzo, I don't trust you." "I know." "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity, Tamara." "What is it, if it's not pity?" He paused. "What I feel is responsibility, regret, and the wish to help, if you'll allow it." Tamara looked away. Florence stepped in. "Say what you came to say." Chibuzo nodded once. "I brought some things." He lifted the bag he had come with. Fruits, food, prenatal vitamins, a few medicines the doctor had earlier prescribed, but Tamara had not yet bought because she had been too overwhelmed. Tamara noticed them, then looked at him again. "Chibuzo, I don't want gifts." "Please, it's not a gift, Tamara. It's help." She almost told him to leave, but Florence had already seen the medicines. And despite herself, Tamara was tired. Too tired to fight every single thing. So she said nothing. That silence was the first crack in the war between them. He came again 2 days later, and then again. At first, Tamara spoke to him only when necessary. "What do you need?" "Nothing. We are fine." "I'll leave this here." "Thank you, but please go." Short answers. Cold face. No welcome. But he kept coming, and not in the old arrogant way. He did not throw money around. He did not speak like someone used to control. He asked what she needed. When she refused to answer, he left what he brought and went. One day it was food. Another day it was a blood pressure monitor Florence had mentioned in passing. Another day it was baby vitamins and some simple groceries. He checked on her, not too much, just enough for her to know he was there. One evening, after a rough day full of crying and nausea, Tamara decided to go out alone for air. She did not tell Florence. She only drove to a quiet roadside cafe, sat for a while, and realized halfway through a cup of tea that she felt worse, not better. By the time she got outside, the sky was dark and her legs felt weak. She held the side of her car and shut her eyes. A familiar voice came from behind her. "Tamara." She turned and saw Chibuzo walking toward her from the other side of the lot. He had clearly been leaving the pharmacy next door. He took one look at her face and came closer quickly. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Have you eaten?" She did not respond. That told him enough. When she swayed slightly, he reached for her arm at once, but carefully. No roughness, no assumption. "Easy," he said softly. "I have you." She hated that her body did not have the strength to reject the help. He opened the passenger door of her car, helped her sit, then took the keys from her hand when he saw how badly they were shaking. "I'm driving you home." "I can drive." "No, you can't." Too tired to argue, she leaned back. The ride was quiet. At her apartment, he helped her upstairs slowly. Florence, who had just arrived and was about to panic, relaxed only after seeing Tamara was safe. She was weak. I didn't want her driving. Florence nodded, cautious but grateful. That night, Tamara did not tell him to leave immediately. He stayed until she had eaten a little and taken her medicine. Then he sat in the armchair by the window while Florence moved about the kitchen. For the first time, the room did not feel like a battlefield, just uncomfortable. Careful. New. A week later, Chibuzo made a suggestion. "Come and stay in my house for a while," he said. Tamara looked up sharply. No. He had expected that. "You are not well enough to be alone often." "I'm not moving into your house. There will be staff, security, comfort, whatever you need." Tamara shook her head. "No. It will be easier." "For who?" He paused. "For both of us." Tamara laughed softly. "That is exactly why I will not do it." Chibuzo accepted the refusal without argument. After that, he changed his approach. Since she would not come to his house, he began spending more time in hers. He came after work and stayed till late if she was having a difficult day. Sometimes he sat quietly in the living room while Florence cooked. Sometimes he helped carry things from the car. Sometimes he just listened while Tamara complained about how tired she was, how strange her body felt, how much she hated needing anyone. One night, after Florence had to leave unexpectedly to attend to a family matter, Tamara had a spell of dizziness and started crying out of frustration more than pain. Chibuzo stayed. He sat outside her room until she settled. When it became too late to leave and she finally slept, he stretched out on the couch in the sitting room and spent the night there. The next morning, Tamara found him still asleep, one arm over his eyes, shoes on the floor, his tie loosened. She stood there for a few seconds, looking at him, still uncertain, still guarded, but no longer able to deny that something in the air between them was changing. Not into peace, not yet, but into something less sharp than before. When he woke and saw her standing there, he sat up at once. "How are you feeling?" Tamara answered after a pause. "Better." It was a small word, but it was the softest one she had given him in a long time, and both of them noticed. The next morning, Tamara woke up earlier than usual. For a few seconds, she lay still, listening to the quiet in the apartment. Then she remembered that Chibuzo was still there. She came out of her room slowly and found him on the couch just as she had left him the night before. One arm was thrown over his face. His long legs almost hung off the edge. He had slept in an awkward position, but even like that, he still looked annoyingly good. His shirt had pulled slightly at the neck, and Tamara could not help noticing again that he was a very handsome man. Not just handsome in the obvious way. There was something softer in his face when he was asleep, less guarded, less proud. She stood there for 1 second too long. Then she pinched herself lightly. "What is wrong with you?" she whispered under her breath. She blamed it immediately on hormones. That had to be it. Nothing else made sense. As if he heard something, Chibuzo stirred and opened his eyes. He looked at her and sat up quickly. "You are awake." Tamara folded her arms at once, trying to look normal. "Obviously." A faint smile touched his face. "How are you feeling?" "Better." He nodded and stretched. "Good." She noticed he looked uncomfortable from sleeping on the couch. "You could have gone home." "And leave you alone after last night? I would not have done that." He stood up. "I know, but I still stayed." Tamara looked away before he could see the small change in her face. A few minutes later, she heard movement in the kitchen and came out to find him making breakfast. She stopped at the entrance. "Chibuzo, what are you doing?" "Cooking." "I can see that. Why?" "Because you need to eat." Tamara leaned against the doorframe. Since when did a billionaire start frying eggs in someone else's kitchen? Since the woman in the house became too stubborn to take care of herself. She wanted to be annoyed. Instead, she almost smiled. "Don't you dare burn my pan." "I know what I'm doing." "You sound too confident." "You complain too early in the morning." She shook her head and went to sit down. By the time Florence came in later that morning, breakfast was already on the table. Florence paused at the sight before her. Tamara sat in front of a plate of eggs and toast while Chibuzo poured tea like he had always belonged there. Florence looked from one face to the other and hid a smile. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," Tamara replied. Chibuzo nodded. Morning. Florence came closer and looked at the food. So, did you cook this? Unfortunately, he did. Chibuzo looked offended. You ate everything. Florence laughed softly and sat down. That morning, for the first time in a long while, the apartment did not feel heavy. Days began to pass differently. Not perfectly, not without pain, but differently. Chibuzo kept showing up in simple ways that slowly became hard to ignore. He came with fruits and medicine without making a big speech about it. He learned the doctor's instructions and reminded Tamara when she forgot. He noticed the little things too. When she was more tired than usual, when she was forcing herself to smile, when she had not eaten enough. He escorted her to clinic visits and sat with her like a man who had nowhere else more important to be. One afternoon, as they drove back from the hospital, Tamara turned to look at him. Do you not have work? He kept his eyes on the road. I do. Then why are you always with me? He smiled faintly. Because I want to be. You spend too much time here. I own the company, he said simply. I can go whenever I like. Tamara rolled her eyes. You are too proud. And you like saying that. I do not. You do. She turned her face toward the window, but he caught the smile she was trying to hide. That became their new rhythm. Small arguments, light teasing, a growing ease neither of them fully admitted at first. He annoyed her with his music too. He liked playing old songs from his phone in the kitchen while pretending he had a great voice. He did not. Tamara told him that many times. One evening, he was making noodles while singing badly under his breath. Tamara, seated nearby, pressed her palm to her forehead. Please stop. He looked back. You are jealous of what? My talent. She laughed before she could stop herself. The sound filled the room and surprised even her. Chibuzo turned fully then and just looked at her. The laughter died slowly on her lips. Why are you looking at me like that? He shook his head. It's nothing. But it was not nothing. Because hearing her laugh again felt like watching light return to a place that had gone dark for too long. Florence noticed it before Tamara said anything. One afternoon, after Chibuzo left for a meeting, Florence sat on the bed while Tamara folded a few clean clothes. Florence watched her quietly for a moment. You look lighter. Tamara did not look up. Do I? Yes. Tamara folded another blouse. Maybe I am just less tired today. Florence smiled. No, it is more than that. Tamara sighed and finally sat beside her. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke softly. I feel strangely safe around him now. Florence's smile softened. I know. Tamara looked down at her hands. I did not think that would ever happen. It happened slowly. Yes. She gave a small, thoughtful nod. Very slowly. Florence was quiet for a moment. Then Tamara turned to her and took her hand. Florence, I have to thank you for staying, for being the only true friend I had in all of this. Tamara, you don't have to thank me. I do. Florence looked at her with affection. Then I accept. Tamara leaned her head briefly on Florence's shoulder. You saved me, she whispered. Florence rubbed her arm gently. No, you are the one still standing. For Chibuzo, the change inside him became impossible to deny. At first, he had told himself he was only trying to do right by her. Then he told himself it was responsibility, then guilt, then duty. But one night, as he sat in his car outside her apartment after leaving, he found himself smiling because of something silly she had said earlier about his terrible music. He stayed there a little longer than necessary and realized the truth had already grown too big to hide from himself. He no longer saw the baby as a problem. He no longer saw the future as something to escape. He had begun to imagine it. A small child with Tamara's eyes, a home with less silence, mornings that belonged to more than work and business calls. And when he thought of those things, he did not feel trapped. He felt peace. That was when he finally admitted it. It was no longer pity, no longer guilt. He was in love with her. And the realization did not come with fireworks or drama. It came quietly, the way most real things came. Their closeness kept growing in ordinary moments. You always make me smile. Just returning the favor. Here, try this. Delicious. Your baby. Always. One evening, rain fell heavily outside and the power went out for a while. They sat in the living room with only rechargeable lamps and the sound of water hitting the windows. Tamara was wrapped in a shawl again, feet tucked under her on the sofa. Chibuzo sat across from her, one elbow resting on his knee. The room was calm, no television, no music, just the rain. Tamara looked at him for a long moment, then asked, "Why are you still here?" He held her eyes. "Do you want the polite answer or the honest one?" "The honest one." "I don't like being away from you." The words landed softly. Tamara's fingers tightened around the edge of her shawl. "You say things so easily." "It is not easy, only clear." She looked away for a moment, then back at him. "Against all sense, you have become important to me." Something changed in his face. "Against all sense," he repeated. She gave a small smile. "Yes, against all sense." He leaned back slightly and looked at her as though she had just given him more than she realized. Then he said, "You are important to me too. More than I planned, more than I expected." Tamara's eyes softened. The rain kept falling. The room stayed quiet. And in that quiet, something settled gently between them. Not because they forced it, not because they forgot the past, but because enough small acts of care had slowly become something stronger than fear. Marvelous came back too late. By then, the truth about Doris had fully come out. Marvelous had seen the footage many times over, each time with more shame than before. He had ended things with Doris, and people who had once whispered happily now whispered differently. Doris had become the disgrace she had planned for someone else. She lost Marvelous. She lost the little respect people still had for her. Even those who did not know every detail knew enough to avoid her. She tried reaching Tamara again and again. Tamara never responded. One afternoon, Marvelous came to Tamara's apartment. Florence opened the door and almost shut it again when she saw him. "I need to see her," he said. Florence looked unimpressed. "Why?" "Please." Something in his face made her pause. He looked worn down, thinner, and far less sure of himself than the man who had once spoken to Tamara with cold pride. Florence stepped aside only after Tamara, hearing the voice, said from inside, "Let him come in." Marvelous entered slowly, and what he found hit him harder than he had expected. Tamara was seated in the living room, one hand resting lightly over her stomach. Her pregnancy showed now, not heavily, but enough. The room looked calm, lived in, peaceful in a way his own heart was not. And Tamara herself looked different too. Not fully healed, but steadier. There was pain in her still, yes, but there was also dignity, quiet strength, a new kind of calm. Marvelous stood before her and swallowed. "Tamara." She looked at him. "Why are you here?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he said, "Tamara, I came to apologize." Tamara said nothing. "I know the truth now." "Good." He flinched slightly at the coldness of that one word. "I was wrong. I should have listened. Should have stood by you. Should have done better." "Yes, you should have." He went quiet for a few seconds. Neither of them spoke. Then Tamara rose slowly to her feet. Marvelous eyes fell again to her stomach. She noticed. "This is why you came," she asked. "Because now you can see I moved on." "No," he said quickly. "That is not it." "Then what is it?" He struggled. "I made a mistake." Tamara nodded slowly. "You did." He stepped forward a little. "I was hurt, ashamed, angry, and confused." "You were hurt." She laughed softly. "You were hurt." Marvelous closed his eyes briefly, ashamed. Tamara's voice remained calm, but it was the calm of someone who had cried enough and no longer needed noise to speak truth. "Marvelous. Yes, Doris did something wicked. But you were wrong too. We all have to face the truth of what we did. You have to face your part in the damage." Marvelous looked up at her. "We were engaged. We were about to get married. One bad morning came. I don't know. I was just, no, you judged me with the rest of the world. You did not trust me. You did not believe me. You did not even try. The moment you thought I had done wrong, you jumped straight into my best friend's arms." Marvelous looked crushed now. Tamara took a step closer. Do you know what that taught me? She asked quietly. He could not answer. You taught me that love without trust is nothing. A man can promise forever and still disappear the first day his pride is wounded. Marvelous' face twisted with regret. I was ashamed. I was angry. I was confused. And I was ruined, Tamara said. But I still deserve better than what you did. He had no answer to that. Not a real one. He stood there, broken by a truth he could not defend himself against. Tamara looked at him for one last moment. Then she said, Leave now, Marvelous. Don't come back. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It carried finality. Marvelous looked at her, really looked at her, and understood at last that he had lost her. Not because of Chibuzo, not because of the pregnancy, but because when it mattered most, he had failed to be the man she needed. He nodded slowly, eyes full of regret. Then he turned and walked out. After the door shut, Tamara stood still for a moment. Florence came closer. Are you okay? Tamara let out a long breath. Yes, she said quietly. And she was. Not because the past no longer hurt, but because she no longer needed anything from it. That night, Chibuzo invited her to dinner. A date? She asked over the phone. Yes, he replied. She smiled faintly. You are very bold. I have been told that before. Tamara hesitated only for a moment. Then she said, All right. He took her to a luxurious restaurant with soft lights, quiet music, and the kind of service that made everything feel gentle and thoughtful. But for all its beauty, what stayed with Tamara most was not the place. It was the way he watched her through the evening. Not like someone showing off, not like someone trying to impress, just like a man who was grateful she was there. Dinner was calm, simple, warm. They talked more freely than they ever had before about small things, childhood memories, work, the baby, fear, healing, the strange roads life sometimes used to bring people together. At some point, after dessert had been cleared and the room around them had grown quieter, Chibuzo reached across the table and held her hand. Tamara looked at him. His expression was serious now. Tamara, I don't want our child to arrive into confusion and half-love. She held his gaze. He continued, his voice calm and steady. Tamara, you are one of the strongest women I have ever known. Not because life was kind to you, but because it was not, and you still remained yourself. Tamara's eyes stung. I know I came into your life in the worst way, he said. I know I cannot erase that. And I know I made many mistakes after. What I feel for you now is not guilt. It's not pity. And it's not duty. It's love. A love I fully choose. He rose slowly from his chair. Tamara's breath caught. Then, in the soft light of that room, he went down on one knee. Her eyes widened, already filling. He looked up at her and smiled with the kind of honesty she had once thought she would never get from him. I love you truly and deeply, not because of what happened, but because of who you are. I want to spend my life with you. Love you in peace. Stand by you openly and raise our child with you the right way. He reached into his pocket and brought out a ring. Tamara, will you marry me? Tamara stared at him through tears. For a second, the whole room disappeared. There was no hotel, no courtroom, no gossip, no shattered wedding, just this man, this moment, and the long road that had somehow brought them here. She began to cry softly. Chibuzo looked worried for a second. Tamara. Yes. His face changed at once. She laughed through tears and repeated it. Yes. Yes. The smile that broke across his face was boyish, relieved, and full of something so real that it made her cry harder. He stood up and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he held her carefully, as though he knew exactly how much she had survived to reach this point. And Tamara let herself rest in his arms. Not because the pain never happened. It did. Not because the ruins were not real. They were. But because sometimes life did not end where it broke. Sometimes, from the same broken ground, something good still found a way to grow. Something gentle, something patient, something real. And this time, Tamara was not walking toward it in blindness. She was walking toward it with open eyes, a healed heart, and the quiet courage to believe in love. Thank you for watching this story on Zara Tales. If it moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one.